Hello everyone, Matt Haugen from the 111 Online. I wanted to give you a really short video both on what I'm looking for in the homework notebooks, just for a little more specificity in those. And I thought I'd use that as a excuse to talk about just a couple of other issues and a skill or two. So the first thing I've done here is I printed off one of your questions from Chapter 1. Do note that you can print off any of your homework assignments. You can print them off one problem at a time, as I've done with just this one problem, or you can print off the entire homework assignment. When you get into any particular problem, you'll see the problem up on your screen. You'll also have a list of those buttons over here. One of them is print, and it will ask you if you want to print that problem or the whole assignment. If you print out the whole assignment, you can take the assignment, go work on the problems at your convenience, wherever you happen to be, whether you have internet access or not. And then when you return either to campus or wherever you have internet access, then you can then enter in your answers and have it check those answers and so forth. So keep in mind that printing it out is a nice viable option, particularly if your internet access can be sketchy. One of the things I've asked you to do for this course is to make your homework notebooks. Those are briefly explained in your syllabus. If you haven't seen that, please go read through your syllabus again. But again, I wanted to just be a little more clear and show some examples. One of the reasons we're doing this is it's really important to work on both the specific mechanics, just making sure you can do the problems and get the answers that you need. But you also need to be working on your notation and your organization. One of the things you have to be able to do is clearly show and express the mathematics that you're doing. So to work on those hand skills is often a bit of a trick on online courses. So this is just the particular method we're going to use for this course, and we're going to see how it works. So what I want you to do is, for all of your problems from the MyLabs, essentially treat them as if they were problems from a normal textbook that you were going to do and hand in. So you're going to do them on paper like you normally would. These you should have your name, whether that name is question by question or for a particular section's worth of homework. I don't especially care. But you make sure your name's on it. This is the Chapter 1 homework. And this particular problem is problem 1.4.5. So Chapter 1, Section 4, problem number 5. Then what you want to make sure you're doing is, some of the problems, the way they're written out, are quite long. Some of them are short. But you want to make sure on your homework notebook that you're indicating the problem in one way or another. There's a couple of important reasons for this. It doesn't have to be an exact copy of it. You can paraphrase it, shorten it. But you want to make sure that if somebody was to not know what the problem was and all they had was your work, they would know what the problem was asking, what information you were given, and the steps you took and the solution that you got. And one of the reasons you want to practice that way is that's what you're going to try to show me on things like exams. And if you're not in the habit of doing that, suddenly doing it for the first time during exams can throw off your process. So you want to make sure you're practicing in that kind of writing out my steps and clearly stating my answer kind of way. The reason you want to make sure you're writing out the question is it really helps you focus on making that connection between the problems, what you're being asked, what the instructions are, and the skills you're supposed to bring forward to that problem. One of the issues that a lot of people can have is your skills, your mechanics, what you're doing, but you get on a test and suddenly a problem is presented to you and you're not sure what to do with it. You have all the skills, but they're not organized, ready to respond. So one of the things that can help that is writing out what the questions are when you do them. It helps to link those instructions to the behaviors and the tools that you use. So to accomplish all that, I want to make sure you're doing that in your homework notebooks. So for this problem, you're paraphrasing this. It just says, in case you can't read it because the scale here, find the slope of the line that goes through the given points. So it can just be something like find slope through, and then my given points, -10, 4, and -7, -8. So again, I haven't written it exactly the way that question asked, but I've paraphrased the question. And again, spending some time to focus on what is exactly being asked, is there anything weird or interesting about how they're asked, can help you make sure you're answering the question that's being asked, as opposed to asking what you think the question was being asked. Like, given 2 points, you might make the whole equation of the line and think that's the answer, when that wasn't what you were asked. You were asked for just the slope. Anyway, once we have the find the slope through those 2 points, well, I might express my formula for slope. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's the tool we're going to use. One of the things that I tend to recommend for finding slopes, by the way, is to make sure, let me see if I can get that glare off of there, is to just label them real quick. That's x1, y1. That's x2, y2. Just helps you make sure your order stays solid. So then y2 is -8 minus y1 is 4 over x2 is -7 minus x1 is -10. So I've got here, what, -12 over 3. So the slope is -4. So you're asked to find the slope. So it's nice to say something like, oops, gone off the screen there, like the slope is, oops, forgot my negative, -4. And that's your answer. I know that's a little hard to see with the glare and the scale there. Usually when I do these videos, I'll zoom in on there, but I'm trying to give you a more overall display here. So I'm just making sure that I'm alluding to what the problem is, showing the steps and the tools that I'm using, and sometimes your steps will be really short. Like if something said in y equals 3x plus 2, what's the slope? You would just say the slope's 3, because you're just looking at it and seeing it. That's fine. But if you have mechanics, you want to write these out. And I want you to think of this not only as a tool that you're giving to me for points, though it is, but I want you to think of this as you're building yourself a study tool. You want to have this as something that when we get ready for the tests, you can look these over and identify the types of things you're being asked. Now, if all this said was the answer is -4, it wouldn't be a very effective study tool. But I was asked to find the slope, this was the tool I used, these were the steps I went through, this was the answer I found, can be very helpful, again, in preparing you to be more successful on those exams. So you'll do this for all the problems in that section. And again, you can put, your name and the chapter 1 homework, and then have, all the questions from chapter 1. Use a lot of space, use a lot of paper. We're not here to save trees. If you want to save trees, get a good education, a good degree, and go save some trees, but use paper along the way. Do recycle it later if you want to. But then you'll save these in your notebook. My recommendation is to hole punch these and keep them in a nice, safe notebook. Periodically during the term, by groups, probably the first one will be in a week or so, I'll ask you guys to send me your homework sheets for given sections. What I recommend you do is you either scan them or photocopy them or fax them or whatever, but send me a copy of them so you still have these as a study tool. You really want to think of these as a study tool for yourself. It also gives me an excuse to give you guys some free points for doing your homework nicely and getting good practice. So those points can be very helpful in making up for some tests that might not go quite as well. If you have any questions on that, let me know. But hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'm looking for those.